Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I was assuming that was kind of lying, but that was doing this. So the first order of business tonight is actually acknowledging years of service, the Nikon Service Awards. I think they're all from the rec department, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay. So first, we're 30 years of service to Maureen DePauli. Stand 6 feet away from me. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Get your prayers to 30 more.
This is crazy time. All right, wow.
30 years.
Next, with 25 years, Laura Chopin. Laura. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Turn around, Laura. I know you love it. And also with 25 years, Scott Brad.
Wow. Started as a baby. Working baby. Working babies, yes.
And then with all that experience, we'll talk about the money. Yeah. Yeah.
Plenty of room up here.
Good evening.
So I guess group hugs it up.
I'm not any high risk demographics. Yeah. Recreation parks. Ellie?
No. Well, good evening. Thank you for having us here. First of all, before we get started, I want to, as I always do, give special thanks to Larry and Brenda for their patience and hard work in helping us come up with what we think is a very fair and good budget. I'm very grateful that behind me I have several members of the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee, and I'm really thrilled that we have several members of the Irvington Woods Committee who know how important our request to you tonight is regarding the Nature Center budget, and they're also here to show support. So thank you, everyone, for being here. It's much appreciated. So, this year, if you look at our budget, and I'll basically go by the summary page that Brenda gave you. If you look, there is really not anything significant until you get down to the 7989 numbers. If you look at everything up top, they are all either minor additions or to the lines, or there are deductions to the lines. The biggest numbers, which are almost a wash, are the adjustments that needed to be made to the senior citizen program and our staff, with Joan Armstrong going from a full-time employee to a part-time employee, and her spot, when she's not working, she works 24 hours a week, and then we use other staff to deliver other services. So those two numbers almost take each other out. Then where you see the real new request, it starts at 7989-123, which is for the Nature Center, for staffing, and for landscape, 43,280 additional funds for that, 12,000 for landscaping, and creation of a new program line, and that program line will basically be a line that the staff uses because we plan on holding many new programs up at the Nature Center. And just as a example of one of the many programs, is just to give you a taste of it, is that we have a apple grafting program, Mark, apple grafting program, which will start in April. In addition to doing one for the public, CJ is working with members of the Girl Scouts, Leslie Seary of the Woods Committee, who's also involved with the Girl Scouts. We're going to do a grafting class for them on the same morning of that, but we gave you that just to show an example of the type of things we'll be doing. One of the people who are here with us tonight that I would like to introduce, because I'm not sure all of you know him, CJ, would you just stand up for a second? That gentleman is CJ Riley. CJ is the one who has really, from the educational part of the Nature Center, made the drastic changes. You know, again, just the hands-on stuff. We are in the process of planting 250 trees and shrubs up at the Nature Center. And yesterday, CJ and I were in the Irvington High School recruiting students to help with this project. And we did quite well, but CJ puts enormous detail into everything. And just to give you a little bit of a quick example, I said to CJ, look, I'm going to handle recruitment for Memorial Day, so I want you to come up with a one-page flyer that we'll put on an easel on your side, and I'll have an easel on my side of the table. We'll have snacks for the kids in the middle, and when they see our posters, whichever they want to talk about, they'll come up to us. So this was mine, okay? And this was mine, and kids walked in the hallway, and if they wanted to talk to me, I had about 25 kids sign up that are going to be part of Memorial Day. So I asked CJ to do the same thing, to give me the one-page thing, and this is what CJ gave us, okay? Okay, one page with all of the detail, and the other page with all of the explanation. Because when CJ does something, it's done thoroughly, and every member of the Woods Committee will tell you that. The turnaround on the property, the development of the pollinator gardens, the new project which will be starting shortly, which is the creation of a meadow garden. We had 2 Norwegian maples that were taken down last week that we really dragged our feet on because we did not want to take them down, but there really was no choice. They weren't safe, and no matter what I tried to get somebody to tell me it would be good, they had to go. But the good thing is they're gone. It looks real open back there, but the development of a meadow garden will be an exceptional thing for the property and for the community. So we're very excited about that. So that I just pointed some of those things out, and as you know, you also received last week, and I know you guys are busy, but I did send you the 2 documents that we've been using. One is an overview of the educational material. It's a 23-page document which pretty much shows you everything that's been going on up there. And then was another 24-page report on everything that we've done up there in 2019 and 20. It is no longer a little nature center, but it also can no longer be run with members of the rec staff having to go up there to let somebody in, to stay and watch someone. We need help up there, and if we can get help up there, we can generate more revenue. The grounds of the Nature Center are getting attention all over the place. We have an Eagle Scout project, which is going to create a new trail down to the marshlands. We have the project, as I mentioned before, about the 250 trees. In addition to that, CJ and our landscaper, Peter Strom, who's also magnificent, are planting a whole bunch of other types of plants to help try to revive things, to help the understory. It's just really become a very active and busy place, and it will continue to grow. We get calls from all over, from Connecticut through all parts of the county, people who want to visit. The director of the Rye Nature Center wanted to know if I would trade properties with her. She has a $1.4 million budget and 15 staff members, and she would trade her property for ours in a heartbeat. She could not believe what we had. So, one of the people in the audience is Zoe Hamilton. Zoe had the idea back last May. Gee, do you think we could build a pollinator hotel? And less than 6 weeks later, we opened a pollinator hotel up there, which several people have copied, including the Main Street School. So we're very proud of everything we've done, but we need to take the next step. For me, it's quite an amazing journey. For those of you who were on the board 5 years ago, I sat here and my exact words were, I'm afraid that next budget year I may be asking you to try to sell the Nature Center. I don't know if we can survive. And with the help of Nikki Coddington, with the help of Rick Arpak and the rest of the Woods Committee, we're heading to a great place, and we need your help to give us the funds to do so. So, I don't know if you want me to get into lines with a $1,000 change or not, but I'm open to any questions you may have.
First, I just want to compliment you on that material. It was so impressive and beautifully done. Wow.
CJ.
CJ, thank you, CJ. So, one question I had on this, the Nature Center part-time staff is, how many staff members are?
We don't know. Okay, it'll be a number that'll be used and people will be hired based on what we need. One of the things we weren't sure of, because CJ is pretty talented, we didn't know if we'd have him. So right now, it looks like he's committed to stay with us, especially if we can give him more hours.
Not too talented for us.
Right, well, he's also developing the curriculum for the entire K through 12 nature curriculum in the Mamaroneck School District as a consultant. So, depending on programs, again, here's one of the things that we have to get to. We can't have someone have to think the Nature Center's open on a Saturday morning if they want to go in there and use the restrooms. So we want to make sure that there's opportunity for people, that we can have set hours, and the set hours shouldn't be CJ. He's much too valuable for that. But there are many people who can learn from CJ and give tours of the grounds, and that's one of the things that some of the Woods Committee members helped me to develop, some job descriptions. And with CJ back, we can now take some of their ideas and work with him and work with the landscaper to, again, have the Nature Center more accessible to the community.
So, can you explain what would be involved with the landscaper? That's a 12,000. Are you increasing?
Well, yes, we've had Peter right now has done much more than we had scheduled him to do because of the growth of the Nature Center. So this would allow us to use him more than one day a week for his real work, and then allow us to shift CJ into more educational skills. Now, that would not all just be one person. It would allow us the opportunity to bring in an additional landscaper if we needed it. The grounds are very challenging, as you know, and the landscaper also would be helping us with the development of this new trail and some additional trail work that we plan on doing.
And kind of connected to that, but maybe this is pictured somewhere that I haven't paid attention to. In terms of increased ability for people to drive up there and park, tell me the
Sure,
current
we went
future
from,
plan.
yeah, well, I don't know when the last time you might have been there is, but this time last year, we probably 15 cars would have been a tight squeeze. With the creation of the new area we made up there, we now can fit 35 cars on the property, which is an enormous difference for us. One of the real negatives to big events was the need to have to park on Mountain Road and having to hire staff to do that, get the police department involved. So now with that area, which is gated, so we only open the new parking when we need it. For example, the Garden Club has 2 events a month up there. One event is their regular meeting. We don't open the gate for that. They fill in the lot. One is usually a program. We open the gate for that, and we're able to accommodate cars. We also get tremendous support from from Steve Caparella and the DPW. As an example, on a day we have an event, we'll open the transfer site gate, and staff will park down on that road, which leaves additional parking. So, more than doubling the available parking on the site has, again, given us new hope. We thought we were close to a deal with the Greenberg Nature Center, and one of the discussions I had with their director at the time was, when she was walking out with me, she said, "Joe, we're going to do great things here, but it'll be dependent on one thing," and she said, "You have to get me more parking." And that really was what spurred us on to do what we did. And if you go up there, you'll see it's natural. We took down Norwegian maples. I think we took 9 down, CJ?
Yes.
9 trees down, and we're replacing them with 250. I think it's a good trade.
So the landscaping doesn't, you're not expecting to expand parking?
No additional, not above where we are right now.
And
Yeah, I don't know how we could right now. It may be possible in the new parking area, if we're able to move some things, some rocks and some things, we might be able to squeeze an additional 3 to 5 in there, but we didn't go that way yet. What we did, we needed to do quickly because we were getting ready to host the school district. We hosted the entire high school staff, We hosted the entire Main Street school staff, and we also hosted the administration up there, and we had to get parking done quickly. So we did what we did in a matter of 2 weeks.
Now, did they like carpool? Because it seems like that would be maybe
Well,
more than 35 cars to bring.
Well, they asked people to
Yeah.
do that, yes. They were coming from the schools that they teach in, and the principals made the announcement, any of you who could jump in with somebody, please do so. And we did not need to use the road for any of those events. Now, if we need to use the road, the chief has always been supportive that we can, on the south side of Mountain Road, that's ours.
Have parked there.
If he tells us we can park there, then we can park there, but it does require staffing, and if it's a really big event like we've had up at the Nature Center sometimes, you will need policemen to be involved with that.
So in terms of coordinating your plans for programming and the kind of parking you have there, you're comfortable that that's a balance
I would-
that will work?
I would love more and take more, but the ability to run bigger programs is now, it's doubled. So this landscaping program, which we think will fill with 25 people, will have no trouble fitting up at the site. Okay, we're hosting, I don't think we've shared it with you yet, but we're working with a woman by the name of Megan Covington, who's done a series of plays up in the theater, and Megan and her husband have designed a play which is basically about climate change. And there's 5 different plays that they'll present, 10 minutes each, and then there'll be a table of people who will then describe it. It's, I guess the way they described it is climate change hardcore, because some of the issues are really tough. I had Nikki Coddington and Susie Frimmer meet with them with me to make sure they thought it was effective and appropriate. They loved the idea. They're probably going to be 2 of the panelists on that, and they're going to put on 2 nights plays, 50 each night. So, because really 50 is the maximum in the building, that's what it's rated at, is 50. So if 50 people are there, and you have to assume not everyone's coming on their own, we should be okay. Will we be challenged on some events? Yes, I'd rather be challenged because there's 100 people trying to be on the grounds and in the building than, sitting here telling you I can't get anybody to go to the
No,
nature
no, it's a
center.
good problem to have.
It is.
We're just trying to figure out if it's in a good.
It is so much better than it was a year ago, Connie. It's, I don't even know how to state how much better it is.
And having a van, I mean, take 8 people up is
Sure.
certainly environmentally the right thing to do if it's convenient for people,
Well,
and having a group
yeah.
go up together.
One of the things we've done in the past is we use the Make-A-Wish property, and they've allowed us to park there, and we bus people up.
Right.
We can do it from Main Street. I think there's other options available to us, but I do think the majority of programs that we will hold, we have enough parking to accommodate that.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you anticipate more revenue increase?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so this is a one-shot?
Yeah, and the more programs that run and the more money that they bring in, the better it'll be.
That's, I just wanted to make sure that
I was
this.
kind of thinking that was a given, yeah. I mean,
We should talk a little bit about revenue, because the projections are down.
Right.
The only thing that I was going to ask about that was I assume the youth baseball is just, numbers are down.
The competitive players are all in Elmsford, so our numbers are down, so we dropped our projection for it. We also had to drop our revenue because of that. We are changing gears. For example, we're in negotiations with Hardball, which is a company out of Elmsford, and we're trying to rent our fields to them. When you're me, there's nothing sadder than looking at Scenic Hudson Park in the summer, and outside of softball, that second field just sits unused. So looks like we're going to strike a deal with them, and with the work we've done on negotiating with them, we then will have in place a real rental policy, so other groups, non-resident groups, will have a format that they can follow if they want to rent our fields. The problem is that the people who've wanted to use our fields in the past weren't residents, and when we've tried to entice them to, where we would even help pay for their program, if they would go with all resident teams, coaches wouldn't, because they want to be good. And that's a very frustrating thing. Travel sports has always been a real problem for us, so. We have big numbers in pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade. Our numbers drop off significantly after that. So rental is the direction that we're going in. We're looking at other options. We've had some requests for kickball. Who wants to guess what the number one request for a new program is?
Pickleball.
You got it, pickleball. It is the number one request, is people want a pickleball court. So it'll be in the capital budget.
You kind of reminded me about rentals, and in terms of the senior center room, what is the circumstance these days? Maybe it's somewhere in the numbers on the rental, not significant?
No, we rented. Laura Copeman kind of handles all of the rentals. There are a lot of weekends or days we can't rent it because we need it for things we're doing. But people don't hesitate to rent it until they hear they can't have alcohol. And so both facilities, so we're renting. I think we'll rent more as time goes on because more and more people are seeing it. One of the things we can't do, though, which hurts us, is people want us to rent more than a month out. Renting more than a month out is very difficult because a lot of times it limits our ability to be creative and our ability to say yes to a program we want or something Joan needs for the seniors. So we've kind of used that 1 month out, and that, there's one gentleman who's asking for a date in May, and I think he calls 3 times a day to see if I've made a decision for him. So, but rentals go okay. I think we do have to, RPAC, I think we have to look, is it time to maybe up the fee a little bit? Right now, it's if you're a resident, I believe it's $350, and then you pay a security deposit of $300, and if you play nice, we give you your security deposit back within a few days. So, but as far as revenue goes, one of the things is, we did not hit our projections for special events, and one of the problems with that is it's very hard to get blood from a rock. And most of the resources that we have as a department kind of get tapped on for Oktoberfest. So, you ask a group to give you a $5,000 check for Oktoberfest, you can't go back and say, now I need $5,000 for the hayride. So you take the profits you make with face, and then you have them help pay for some of your hayride expenses, let's say. So, and on Larry, I think, quite honestly, he was the one who pushed to reduce that number because I think he's tired of me being a fundraiser.
I mean, we've had philosophical discussions over the years about that, and I think, for the amount of money that was involved, it's not massive amounts of money that we're talking about here. The amount of effort compared to the amount of money just wasn't there and worth it. There's a lot more important things to run in a department of this size, and that just didn't make sense. So we adjusted some of those numbers to be a little bit more realistic. Anyway.
So on the rental, I guess I can understand people want to plan ahead, and maybe there's some adjustment to thinking about the seniors' programs getting determined ahead of time more. Because if I were planning a party, I would be doing it 3 months ahead myself.
Yeah, and Connie, I think because it's happened so much lately, it's definitely going to be an agenda item for RPAC to take a look at. RPAC helped develop the entire rental agreement, so I would definitely give them a say in that, and we'll represent that that's probably the number one issue in front of us right now, with people calling to rent the facility.
The alcohol thing, I can understand that discussion. I don't know where that should go. I know that, in the theater, it's never sold, but it's available.
Yeah, again, being the rec, I think we have to have a different position, especially in a building where we hold programs or we may have kids. And we do have a lot of kids.
Right.
We do plan on using the senior center for more and more kids programs. Maureen's working right now to try to get some cooking classes down there on the days that we have reduced senior activity. So, listen, 29 years I fought that battle and won, and then I lost a few years ago. Thank you, Brian. And I've tried to deal with it, but
Prohibition's over.
yeah, but I'll be leaving soon, and then you can change.
It's really only Oktoberfest.
Yes, I'm grateful for it at Oktoberfest.
So there is no Oktoberfest?
Not this year.
Not this year.
Okay, just to make it clear.
What, on that, I'll wait till you're done with your questions.
I do have one question.
Sure.
It's probably one of those department I've already considered, but with this kind of replanting What are you doing for deer protection?
CJ, we have, I'll answer because now I remember. All of the, we have these sleeves that will be put all over all of the trees. Correct. Correct. And believe it or not, with all the deer that we have up in the woods, our gardens, our educational gardens, CJ and Peter have been magical. We have had very few problems. The fencing we put around them has been very effective, and the maintenance of the grounds, you know, we'll have some issues with the development of the meadow garden, but they're nowhere near the issue geese are.
On this issue, with the 200 trees, they're gonna be sleeved to some extent until they get big enough to protect them in a better way.
I mean, it's an ongoing process. I know that Hastings is, you know, looking at fencing off large areas for exclusion, which, you know, makes it somewhat simpler on one level, but more expensive on the other.
Yeah, they're lucky, well, I'm not lucky, but their parks basically, if I'm not mistaken, broken into basically two areas, and one of them is big enough but yet small enough to consider full fencing. I don't know how to fence 300 acres of
No,
woods.
but you can fence a particular development.
Absolutely. In fact, in clusters of trees, that may happen.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so here's the big announcement. Good news. We were thinking it was going to be a little later, but effective Monday, March 16th, Matheson Park will be closed. The project will begin. The fencing of the construction area will begin on Monday. The work will quickly go from there. Larry and I have, we're very pleased with our contractor. They've been very attentive to us. They seem to really care. They're from Ossining. They actually, one of the people knows Maureen's family from growing up, and you just got a good feel from the people you were with that they really want this to be a great project. They also know I'm a neurotic, and I will be watching everything they do. But we're pleased. We do think it's going to go through September. I think one thing we found out yesterday, which is kind of cool, I don't know if it's realistic, but Matheson Park was dedicated on September 6, 1945. How cool would it be to rededicate it on September 6, 2020? So I don't know if it could happen, but, you know, we'll see.
Budget a little bit for close.
Yeah, so we will be releasing information to the public. There'll be email blasts, there'll be Facebook, Twitter, we'll get it everywhere. The only thing that's in the announcement is that the bathrooms and the kayak racks will occasionally be open and available, but there will definitely be days where there'll be no access to the park whatsoever. So if the weather is good, we should be happy. Maureen and Janet Kovacs, who headed the volunteer committee, met with the playground landscape structures yesterday to make their final choices on colors, and at the rec right now, there are the 4 choices laid out that they're going to make the final decision on. So it should be fun to watch the project go on. But there'll be, you know, again, the park will basically, the only thing that will be available is if you walk down the ramp, within 15, 20 feet of being in there is where the fence will run from the shoreline all the way to the Metro North tracks, because we have to protect all the trees in there. And in addition, because no one will go under the picnic area, that entire area, the entire length of the project will be off limits. And then the other trees that are not underneath the picnic area will all be protected. And we spent much time with them explaining how important that was to us. So
I'm just trying to remember if online, if people in the public who are interested in seeing the graphic pictures of the plan, are they able to?
no,
Not Facebook, well-
it's you could access it through the village website where the bids were. In fact, I had several people call me, including Leola Speck, and I walked her through and showed her how to get there because her and I were having climate control discussions. So
we can do a
We
project.
could do
You
more,
can
too,
make
so.
it a way to say, here it is, if you want to see,
Sure.
people will
Sure.
pay attention to it once they see the fencing and things going on, they might want to see
The
it.
sign on, that's going to go up on, there's going to be an 8x4 sign going up on the fence, which has the words of the closing, and then it has also a photo of what the finished product will be. So everybody going by will get an opportunity to see that. It's a sketch, but the message loud and clear, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I appreciate it. I would like, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mark.
No, I just had a quick question about that. What, I'm trying to remember now, because I think I missed out on one of the presentations. What was the final decision about the stage area? Is that
Another phase.
It's another phase of the project.
okay, so you're not,
So what'll happen is, as this project progresses, we will start looking at, what might be the stage. We have ideas, we want something that's stone, we want something that's in an area that's considered safe. We've already asked Doug Hahn to tell us where not to go from an engineering standpoint, but we're not there yet, and we hope that will be the last step of the project. Right now, it's playground, pathways. As soon as they're done, a rehabilitation of the existing bathrooms, and then the final phase would be the building of a stage performance area. But we don't have plans for that right now, and there'll be a lot of discussion on that. Public will have opportunity to have a lot of input on it, but, we really wanted to get this phase done first.
yeah, because my concern was, just looking at projected impacts on the water level rise on the river, and also then the impacts on the 100-year flood, which is 100-year storm, which, as you know, is happening quite a bit more frequently at this point. So in reference to that, the playground stuff, that's all effectively floodable? I mean, there's nothing there that is going to be damaged.
It's higher, it is higher up in elevation.
Yeah.
It's not,
Considering that.
yeah.
Actually, it's not, if you look at the flood zone maps projected over 10 years. It's in the, it's in what's considered the 100-year flood zone, which we've had several in the last 10 years. So I'm just wondering if,
Well,
there's,
no storm to date, including the 100-year storms we've had, have reached the playgrounds.
I understand that, but that's not the projections. That's currently, it's projections in the next 10 years, depending. So my concern was just that, is that being, since I don't remember the review of the playground stuff, is that being looked at as something that it's kind of flood tolerant for the most part?
I don't know how to answer that, other than that we made the request to Hahn Engineering to make sure what we were doing was doable, was safe, and was in the right place, and the answers we got back were yes.
Okay.
I mean, look, the salt water is the biggest issue.
That's what,
and-
well, for the trees too.
And there could be damage, so
Yeah.
there's no question about that. We know we're building next to a river. But in the whole grand scheme of things, the playground equipment, if you look at a $1.5 million project, playground equipment's, 120,000, 150,000, whatever. It's a relatively small number. We're insured. You know what I mean? There's other mitigating things, so. But yeah, sure, salt water can have a bad effect on that. I mean, obviously, it's tolerant to water. It's a splash park.
That's why we didn't slow down with the stage, because the stage would have to be further towards the river, and we weren't prepared to we weren't going to wait the rest of the project to figure that out, because that's where I think the most attention has to be paid. Correct.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
and that can be moved and tucked away in the right place.
So, again, I appreciate your time. Again, as you know, I've always been so appreciative. I get to work with Rick and RPAC, with Nikki and the Woods, with Tanya and Allison, with the Community Advisory Board, which is an unsung hero in this community, and what they do. And, three staff here tonight, 25, 25, and 30. Joan, who retired after 32 years. I think as much as I love Irvington and the people I serve, I have the best staff in Westchester County, so I'm grateful for their loyalty, and we appreciate what you could consider doing for us for the next fiscal.
we appreciate all your hard work, and I still can't believe Scotty's been there 25 years. At least 25 years old.
And by the way, he had knee surgery 2 weeks ago, so he's on recovery route right now. So that's why he looks so happy. He hasn't had to work in 8 years.
He has been smiling all night.
Why
He's
does he
more
look so much
Kristen Holly
younger?
this
He
life.
looks so much younger than you, Brian. Why is that?
That's the way it is.
All right, my son.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Brenda. Larry. Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated.
I gotta measure my 6 feet.
I'll sit in the back of your car on the way home.
I'm taking you to ride home. Oh, no.
Let's go.
Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated.
Well, I came inside and I stopped sneezing, so obviously it's allergies. It's not
This coming period.
No,
that's not one of the symptoms.
I know, I see.
I know, I checked.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about it. Just see another party canceled that I was going to. Yeah, really canceling things left and right.
Yes, well, I mean, since Connie brings up canceling things, you know, Larry and I, yeah, we've been on the county calls, which have a lot of information from the state. We've also been in touch, obviously, with our police chief, our fire chief, local clergy, the schools, Mercy College, kind of all the big, Evan House, all kind of the big areas in the village, as well as, you know, obviously the county and the state level. This is a changing situation constantly, you know, and obviously tonight we have a work session to talk about the mixed use district. But, you know, looking ahead to our meeting on Monday, which would be the next time we potentially vote, you know, while we haven't made a decision yet, I think there's a very good chance that we would hold off on voting, even if we have a meeting anyway. Just as, you know, more and more, as Connie was just saying, more and more things are getting canceled. You know, there's no real time constraint on this. You know, to have people come out at a time when potentially, you know, if there's no reason to come out, why come out? Then Larry and I started saying, well, if that's the only big thing on the agenda, why are we having a meeting at all? It's another conversation for tomorrow.
Although this is going on for months.
Yeah, I know.
It's not gonna be over at the end of the month.
No, exactly, but.
So you're gonna have to deal with other ways of getting comments and not at the public.
Right,
meeting.
and I think that's, you know, we'll get, you know, I think we received emails today, you know, emails, even good old fashioned letters, if people don't like to send emails, we're happy to continue to take comments, but, you know, forcing, you know, 'cause we had probably 30, 40 people here last meeting, to ask 30, 40 people to come into a room that's relatively small, probably doesn't make sense, but, you know, we haven't made a determination yet, but I just wanted to throw that out there in case people are, you know, worrying about adjusting their schedules for Monday night.
Not that I wanna wish this, but could you do that, phone-in comments, or would you just as soon get them written? I don't know how much of a pain it is. Anyway,
We're
something you
meeting,
might wanna
yeah.
think about.
I mean, certainly the staff is getting together tomorrow to really evaluate the various upcoming events. Some of the upcoming events are the upcoming meetings, and we really need to look critically at what things are on those agendas. And,
Can we have a different venue? Is it possible to have it in a larger venue?
Outdoors.
yeah, which then eliminates the webcast, so.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Oh, true.
So, you know, it's a balancing act.
Sorry, yeah.
Look,
Why were you saying like, oh, so people could be further apart?
yeah,
But also that according to the open meeting laws, you can do video
Yeah,
conferencing.
no. You said they have one place where everybody could go.
Right, you have to have one, but, you know, that's, at some point,
If it goes on for a real extended period and there are things we have to deal with, we can figure that out, but, you know, I think there's just too much unknown right now. But, yeah, I just wanted to kind of frame this meeting with that, you know, very, you know, good possibility that there wouldn't be a vote, not because we weren't ready or because we didn't have more questions, but, you know, just because, you know, it's not necessarily fair to people that are obviously interested in it, whether they were interested in it 2 years ago or 2 days ago, you know, it's not really relevant. We want to make sure that we get all the comments we can, so just throwing it out there, frame this. Brad is excited there might not be a meeting on Monday.
Have a good night, then.
You know, it's obviously changed. Larry and I were saying from Monday to today, the change, and actually, you know, I was talking with Larry, I kind of want to hear what the president has to say tonight, because hearing a few people that were in Washington today, apparently there's been a sea change of the views from the White House about how serious this is looking at
Especially
in Italy, and what's happened in Italy. I think a lot of people are using China as the barometer, but I think Italy might be a lot more applicable to the U.S. So, you know, probably all flights from Europe are going to be canceled tonight. You know, so it's going to be an interesting couple of days, I think. So just putting that out there as we start to work through.
So no decision is made about Monday, we're just
No.
putting it out there. We're
Stay
thinking
tuned.
about
Yeah.
stay tuned, yeah.
Well, like I said, I think we should consider, if we're gonna start having that kind of concern, we should consider using Zoom or some other kind of video conferencing.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is it's hard to have public participation in a lot of those things. You know, yes, we could all find, you know, 4 of you could be in your houses on video. We could cut over to you, we can talk, and then Larry and I are here, and people can come here. Then you're kind of getting back to people coming here, especially for something that's a public, you know, something that there's 40 people that want to talk about. If we were, you know, talking about, you know, I don't know, different
You know
types of
what you
recycling
can do,
containers, it's
Brian? You
different.
know, we should probably, we're about ready to close the public hearing. To close the public hearing until a certain date, and you've got until that date to submit anything on it. And that's another way of, you know,
Yeah,
another way of
we can
dealing with
cross
it.
that bridge when we get there.
Because we're talking, you're talking months.
Potentially,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, we'll see. TBD. Anyway.
Anyway, well, am I,
Give
did
us
that,
that.
did that tee me up? Okay, you know what I did? I made a little, agenda.
Oh.
The issues. Thank you. I brought one over to, I dropped these off at Larry Markey's house,
Oh.
she's been passing out tonight, so.
He said clearly, so he can
Yeah, I
hear.
know. Am I gonna be picked up here, just,
Yeah, Larry
Is that better,
Lonke- Trustee Lonke is a little under the weather, so out of abundance of caution, he's listening from home.
which is
That was
very,
his phrase.
very,
Yes, he's going to be texting Larry.
which I thank him for. Thank you, Larry. Okay, all right, the first 5 issues are issues that were, in the petition that you got last week. The first one is that there be a 75-foot setback for side and rear yards. Larry and I met, with Ashley, from AKRF this week to go through a couple of these things with her, and we raised this with her and asked her whether she thought it would make a difference. She thought it shouldn't make a big difference. Looking at, Larry, do you have the map remember the maps she had? Well, I can put them out here.
You want it on the screen? Sorry.
Well, she showed us this map that she had done with, and this has the building and lot coverage we agreed on, and what's drawn in there is the 50-foot setback. That's the black line that's running around there, is the 50-foot setback.
Of the inner, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you can see the distance between the property line and that, about half of that would be 75 feet. But, the recommendation would be that if you were gonna require 75 feet, and you may not, but if you were require 75 feet, you really only need to do it from residential, you know, from, property lines that abut residential properties, if that's what you wanted to do. I thought,
Can I just take, it's hard to.
yeah, I know, it's hard to,
That passes.
you know what, let me pass this out, because this is, both of these are diagrams that, Maxon did of, you know, of a building that it wanted. Larry, can Larry see me?
Can you see?
The camera's in the back.
Oh, it's this thing, Larry. Yes, that All right. The reason I'm showing you this is, this is probably, the Maxon property is probably the one that would get most affected by it, because, two of the properties are way too, are too small, they're built out. The one where the house is and the small Holy Spirit property, he's got it, I gave it to him. And the other, Abbott House, the Carefield, I keep calling it the Carefield property, which I'm going to tonight, and the Big Holy Spirit property are so big, it's not really going to make a difference. But okay, if you look at this drawing that I passed out, this was a sketch they gave us, I guess, when they were trying to talk us into a bigger FAR. But if you see the line around, the dotted line around the edge, that would be the 50-foot setback for them.
So 11/11/2019, build out analysis.
So this dotted line would be the
The 50,
foot.
right, the dotted line that runs the perimeter of inside the perimeter of the property. Larry, did you get one?
It's right here.
Okay. That,
Try to pull it up on the screen.
Yeah, why not?
Or not.
Whatever.
well, this is, you don't have this,
I don't.
do you? Oh, maybe you
This
do.
is from something that.
It's aspect 120 length.
Yeah, I know, but well, it doesn't matter, because everybody's got a copy. Oh, and if anybody,
That's fine.
I have a couple extra if the people back there want to see what we're talking about. Anyway, I'm just giving you that because it gives you an idea of what the impact would be. Obviously, the way they have the building drawn, they don't have a 75-foot setback on the side facing Strawberry Lane. The side facing the north side wouldn't matter. That would still have a 50-foot setback under language that we talked about, because that doesn't border a residential property. It's bordering another property in this district. On the east side, they're kind of where that's the mansion dictates pretty much what they're going to do there. The front yard is what it is. So that really the only lot line the only setback that would be changed by this would be the one along Strawberry Lane. So I'm giving you that just because you can see the consequences of a 75-foot setback on that property.
Which, your point is, are you making a
I'm not-
specific point or just saying?
No, I
You
just
have to
want,
shift the building
yeah,
structure.
exactly. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. It doesn't have, but anyway, I'm showing you what the consequences would be. I should also say, you probably read the letter, but the attorney for Maxon submitted a letter yesterday that said that they were opposed to increasing the setbacks.
So, but what other properties would be impacted by having 75 foot against a residential zone?
Well, why don't you look up there, I guess, right? Well, no, but 120 is built out anyway. They don't have any setback. 120, you mean the house?
No,
The one next to your
the
building?
co-ops. The co-ops, yeah, they'd be actually 25 feet from them.
Yeah, but that's built out.
So 3 and 4, forget it.
3 and 4 are irrelevant. The only relevant one, and on the Carafiello one,
There's,
nothing, because none of the neighboring properties are residential. Okay, you saw the impact on the Maxon one. On Abbott House,
yeah,
But go back to Maxon as number 1, right?
yes.
Okay.
then number 6, the Abbott House,
That's all residential.
Yes.
so pretty much
All around the perimeter here.
all the east and south sides,
But that
and the west side.
panhandle toward the east, I'm calling it a panhandle.
Yeah.
That's unbuildable, right? I mean, that's steep slopes.
Probably,
everything else.
I mean, yeah, you would think.
That's what I seem to remember from the topography.
only residence that isn't across the street, Strawberry Lane, is the Rabies.
Right, well, and then I guess it would be residential, and Larry, go to the big Holy Spirit property to the north end of it. That's all bordering residential.
And the big empty spaces are because of the slopes and,
Well, those have been subdivided into, those were subdivided about maybe 15, 20 years ago into single-family lots. And they have, you can't see it on there, nobody's built on them, they're empty lots, but they're subdivided, somebody could come in.
I think one house
One house has been built, that's right.
within there. But they're, what some people have called the conference center.
Can you see, where's that, can you see the house?
Is that, yeah.
Very much.
So,
So anyway, it's a decision you guys make, whether you want to leave it the way it is, or if you were going to, I mean, if you wanted to make the change.
so
Oh, go on.
affecting I'm saying the Rabies house is the only, affecting the only residence that's on that side of the street, other than what you just mentioned, would be more the, not the south side, but the little north piece, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but they're probably not going to go beyond that anywhere because of the mansion. Presumably they'll
Assuming
keep the mansion up.
stays.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't-
Yeah, if they were going to take the man, yeah, of course,
Yeah,
they take
right.
the mansion down, they've got more flexibility in where they're
Right,
placing
yeah.
the stuff. But it's pretty unlikely that, because for it and.
So, but my question would be, we spent considerable time figuring out placement of new buildings on this property. And if we change the setback, we calculated building the FAR and building, and additional credits for preserving buildings, whatever. How would those theoretical model buildings be affected if we change the setback?
You mean in terms of how big the building could be? No,
It wouldn't.
no. It only would do it on the two small lots which are built out anyway. Anybody who's gonna build there, see, because they're non-conforming, they would, if let's say the buildings came down, they would be entitled to build on the same footprint. They can't expand anyway, so.
So they could use the same footprint we've been
But
discussing?
they're not gonna be, so forget, what is it, 3 and 3 and 4. They're built out, they're not, they
Right.
barely,
We're really talking about one, right?
the 4 properties, 1, 2, 5, and 6. Max on Cura, Fiello, Holy Spirit, and Abbott House. And it's not, will it increase the FAR number or the coverage number? No.
So it wouldn't affect either way? It wouldn't increase it or decrease it?
No.
No, it's just a position.
Yeah, so like in this case, this would probably be gone, and it would probably fill in over here somewhere or something.
So
like
just
that.
move it over, basically. You can still build what we've been talking about as a reasonable
Maybe.
building on that site, just push it in. That's
Yeah, I mean, we don't know that, but
So I know that the property owners feel strongly that this would help them, but is the main help that they feel they would get by the increased setback mostly noise? Or what would be the advantage to people over here? In fact, what would make the biggest, how big a difference would that make from what we know about?
let me see what the petition says. This is where it came from. Residents with properties adjoining the new zone purchase these properties when the zoning permitted only residential use. The change to a mixed-use zone should not be to the detriment of our Irvington neighbors. New development could expose these homes to increased noise, harsh lights, and ugly obstructions. It's in the interest of all Irvington residents not to set a precedent allowing radical zoning, okay. So
Light,
increase
noise,
the side and rear yard setbacks in the new zone from 50 to 75 for non-single family development to make it more consistent with the character of the neighborhood and with most other provisions in the code. Any commercial property that abuts a residential property must contain appropriate screening. Well, that's already in the code. And deciduous mature trees should be maintained to the extent possible, and evergreen, and that's in there as well.
My guess is you put more screening, which could potentially stop more noise and visual.
So there's a little more space for more screening to decrease some noise.
To
Do we
decrease-
know that that happens? You decrease the noise if you have more trees?
Sure.
Okay, it does, okay, that amount,
Well,
like
it
20,
depends what you plant.
yeah, and how much, I mean, this would be,
Stops things,
this would be 25 more feet than what it is, right?
50% more,
And if it would significantly reduce noise and, I'm just trying to objectify that, you know, if you do.
You
it-
just have to use your own judgment
Yeah.
on that. There's not gonna be any,
Right,
you know,
there's
you're not
no
gonna be able
way
to
to
look up
measure.
the answers.
What kinds of trees for how many feet?
Or the lights, I mean, you know, the code's pretty restrictive as to lighting.
Right, so that's what I'm trying
We had a
to,
noise code, we have lights, we have requirements in there
At the
for
trees.
screening.
right,
Just for visual, again, just try to figure out, any of you, and maybe Joe, because you know what fields look like, 25 feet roughly, what does it look like here?
Oh, right now?
Yeah, I mean, what's,
are you 20?
Probably the width is probably pretty close.
okay. So that's what
Only
we're
the width.
talking about.
Width of the street, right?
yeah.
About the width of the street.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm just trying to balance how it constrains potential realistic development for the property owner and how much it realistically helps the complaints of the neighbors. And these are two things that are pretty hard to really determine.
I'd say one interesting anecdote I can share is my property, which actually it's not
Okay.
here. It's this one, I believe. We actually have a paper road that runs behind our houses. So the Abbott House building is actually on the fence, but there's a paper road in between, and I think it makes a huge difference because it just gives you that much, like if that was on my property, it would feel like it was right on the property, but the extra 25 feet, it's
Is significant.
significant.
So your property, the 3 or 4 right there already have that paper road, but the several to the west.
I think they all have a paper road,
Oh,
but
they do.
Strawberry Lane does not. We're on the other side.
Yeah, I understand that.
Paper road thing's weird anyway.
Well, is Strawberry Lane the only area that actually has the problem? In other words, if we're saying every,
I do think that the people on the top, like the Riverview on the top, were also worried about it.
Can you do your little cursor or your own
So yeah,
real human cursor?
that one there, I think they were worried about it as well. Again, I think there's also a school of thought that that's very difficult to build. But, you know, if that's true, then it doesn't affect anyone either way. If, you don't need more of a buffer if you can't build, and you don't need, less of a buffer to build, so it's almost a moot point. But I don't know if that's true. I know it is rather steep, but.
So is there a trade-off, if the Strawberry Lane folks want an addition, whatever is built on probably the Maxon property, and we're also saying that that shouldn't affect the allowable build, what's the negative?
Okay, so here's, the negative might be, I mean, allowable is one thing, but practical and a reasonably shaped, usable building might not be. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at. We know that the bulk could be, but bulk might not be what actually
Makes
is
the building
something.
functional.
But any functional, good word, functional building. So I think there's,
So you could build, but if you have to stand sideways to
Yeah,
squeeze
right.
in the door, it's not.
Right,
gonna
how
work.
much is that a great positive? So that's what I'm trying to judge how much.
I don't see that this is really an optimized layout.
Yeah, I don't know what it, I'm not saying it
There's
is,
a lot of
but,
room for.
I mean, where do you come down on that, Mark, about,
I like the
functional-
set. Strawberry Lane, I like the setback. I'm just not sure about, if we're really saying every other residential district, I'm trying to see what that means for 6. I had always thought that Panhandle was just not buildable because of terrain.
which part are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at property 6 first, the ones that, I'm looking at every property that's adjacent to a residential zone.
Do we have any idea how wide that is at the narrowest part? Because it's also got to have a road to get in, right?
Right. Well,
So that edge, I don't think is
There's an exit out.
buildable.
I mean, it does exit out somewhere over there.
Right there.
So you'd have to, yeah.
Oh, 6, I'm sorry, I was looking at the Holy Spirit property, I'm sorry.
Oh, there are 2 panhandles.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing about property 5 is to go to a 75-foot setback along that one edge, if that's residential on the other side, means that they've got buildings that are then pushed into non-conformance. Effectively, right? Because
Which edge?
I'm thinking this is a residential edge, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
So that means that this building and this building,
There's nothing there. Those are
Those aren't,
those are
those,
just conceptual.
oh, those are.
those were
Yeah,
conceptual.
these were some of the conceptual.
They were the blocks.
Yeah,
This is
so you could see, what 20% coverage looks like.
Right, that's
Yeah.
only that's only
Buildings
the building.
are here
And there, that's it, okay.
Yeah, and the gate.
All right, I see, that's why they're brown, okay, got it. So, I mean, I don't really see the downside of having a wider setback along residential.
No, I think this is one where it's one that we can give to Strawberry Lane folks that doesn't have a huge disadvantage to the property owner, in my opinion, with, as you say, better plans. I don't think that this was submitted as the end-all be-all plan, it was just a conceptual design, so, I think that you can easily shift some of this around.
Is there any appetite for taking 25 and dividing it in 2? And instead of making it 25 more, making it 12 and a half feet more? And
I think I like it. What's the zone that has the 75 feet? There's another zone, is it the I-40? There's one of the other zones that they quoted that has the 75
Let me see, hold
setbacks.
on. I can
I
look
thought
at
to me
this.
that kind of also.
I mean,
It was, I thought, a good argument for, is that there's other
some
zones.
consistency with some other,
Zones already have it.
I mean,
Well, no, the one, God, you're close.
autograph.
No, the one of 6, this is really interesting.
I didn't
No.
resist.
No, the one F80, which is 2 acres, is 50 on the side, 75 on the rear.
Let's figure what they're
The
talking.
one of 60 is 30 on the side, 60 on the rear. I didn't see that number before. And the one of 40 is 25 and 40. Those are what, if it were one of 40, which I think is what it's zoned now, the setbacks on the side would be 25 and the rear 40.
Now this is 50. If it were 60,
That's
It's
residential.
residential use.
it would be 60, it would be 62.
Right, that's 62 and a half.
It would be 62 and a half if you want to, I don't know, I'm going to say that's what I propose, but,
King Solomon law.
right.
Janice, any thoughts?
Anybody else?
Dave Larry has any thoughts?
Yes, ask Larry to, I think Larry had said in his email,
You thought,
didn't
Years
he?
ago,
That he didn't want to change it.
Right, he said he generally supported leaving it where it was, although he would,
Go with the majority.
go with the majority.
Which we don't have, well,
Assuming we have one, which would be,
Where do you stand on it?
I think I go with the 75.
just along Strawberry or
I think
along
I'd do
Hay?
it any residential, so I think it just makes it cleaner. Just makes it easier to know where it's all around. Oh, sorry. I said I would lean towards the 75 and any residential, joining any residential zone.
So it's you?
I wonder if we want to hear from the folks who.
We're not supposed to be, it's supposed to be a work session.
Never mind.
We've heard it, we've heard it, we've
We can still
heard it.
hear from them after this, so,
Right.
but.
I think I'm leaning towards the 75 because the people on Strawberry Lane are in such a unique position, given that it's not a village road and, you know, we're not in a position to take it over, and this is a huge change on a residential street. It's not like what's going along on Broadway, which is completely different in character.
And it's also, we're not talking about increasing setbacks on properties that have existing commercial uses.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
I
right.
understand.
And we're not altering what can be built, we're just altering the where on the property it can go. I'm just emphasizing that point again, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so what's in yellow there would do that, if that's what you want to do, like to make that change?
Well, so if we have Larry's point of view, is keep it like it is?
Larry said, I'll go with the majority.
Oh, okay.
Wait, do we have a majority?
And
Yeah.
if you're saying
Yeah, we do have a
75,
majority, right?
75 and
I just
75,
have one question, if I may.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Connie.
No, I was just gonna say, that's obviously a majority, that's three.
What about the, you know, the appendix sticking in this way?
You
Which,
can't see what you're
oh, I
talking
know, I
about.
mean,
This-
Blocking what you-
Professor, professor.
okay, this guy here, I could see it.
Yeah, I know.
You knew exactly
The
what you were
ratings, right. the
So,
ratings.
yeah, so,
There'd be a 75-foot setback right here.
Right
Oh,
there,
yeah,
for
that's
that
right, I
square.
said it
It's
was
about- it's a
back
little
here
nothing.
for yellow, but it's just a little jog. Yeah,
Around it.
Yes.
that's what we were looking at here, Mark, though, saying it's the one that wouldn't be much affected because the mansion's back there.
Right.
Oh,
The mansion's already up on the
I'm sorry,
setback.
I was slow.
That way you're blocking it.
Oh, I see, because if you make, the mansion's already, would be already in that zone.
It's either
anyways.
50 or the 75.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, then the second item in the petition was that there be no outdoor activities at conference centers, hotels, and restaurants. Here, I drafted, this is an idea. Larry and I talked to Ashley about it, and maybe it'll work.
It's not so comfortable.
Pardon?
That's fine. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I know, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with the concept to begin with.
Okay, well, then we're talking, but Larry, we're talking about, now what I gave you, I marked as 2, okay? About, you could have a section on outdoor activities that said, any outdoor activities conducted by any permitted use in the North Broadway mixed-use district must comply with the following restrictions. A, no outdoor activities shall take place within 100 feet of any property line. No amplified music or sounds are permitted outdoors. No outdoor activities shall take place before 9 a.m. any day of the week, nor after 9 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday, and 10 p.m. on Friday, Saturday, and the night before a federal holiday. You can come up with whatever times you want, but anyway, as just a framework for discussion.
How is that different from our noise? Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's,
Yeah, well, these times are totally, these times are totally, I think actually the times were similar to the outdoor cafe.
the sidewalk cafe, right?
Oh,
Similar,
Okay.
right, but maybe a little bit earlier,
We should put,
Yeah,
I think so.
no smoke machines or odorous,
yeah.
Let's check the outdoor cafe time. I think it would be, make sense to,
Yeah, we looked at that, and then, I think we modified it a little bit, but recognizing, well, first of all, this is just a framework, change whatever
mean, 'cause there-
you want.
there's certainly, residents very close to the Main Street outdoor cafes. Not that there's ever, I don't think there's ever been any music outside.
Right, but it's also a business district, so
Right,
it's
right, right,
different.
right, got it.
No sidewalk cafe shall operate other than between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday, and this said 9 to 9. And between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. on Friday, Saturday night before holiday. And this says
2 hours.
9 a.m.
Right,
to
so
10
this
p.m.
starts later and
Ends an hour earlier. I mean, you could even make it a little bit later in the morning if you wanted to do that, 10 a.m. I mean, but
outdoor.
100 feet of any property line. That means that if you're got a 250-foot setback, you could have a outdoor barbecue event on that front yard, right? With
Here's
tents
the
and everything.
50, here's the 100.
yeah.
I think the intention here was to allow the types of things like dining or a cocktail hour, but not a party, right? So that's where the timing, that's where the time restrictions come in, and also the no amplified music comes in to discourage that, but it would not prevent, outdoor dining at a restaurant,
Yeah.
that type of
Or a cocktail reception before a wedding. or something.
Which makes perfect sense, and that's very
Right, but
typical.
we're not trying to emulate, the Tarrytown house with an outdoor reception.
Right.
And accommodate that somehow in this zone.
No, I think that this is
Well, I
a
guess
good
so.
way of doing it.
I could put a tent up there, right? Within that area.
A tent.
I don't know what the,
But still, the activities are regulated or prohibited.
You mean a
in what context? So in what context?
A dining area.
You have a wedding,
A
you have a
reception.
tent. And
I'll put up a tent and it would only be operated between, I don't know, let's say noon and 6 for a reception. I don't know.
Between what,
Noon and 6, sorry.
then that should be okay.
But I'm wondering about the 100-foot, that's where I'm concerned about that we're letting the camel back in the tent, so to speak.
So to speak.
By, at least.
Okay, so you could say, with what?
That restriction was in there from the last iteration, right, the 100 bucks?
No,
That's all,
no,
no?
yeah, no. You could say, so you're concerned about the Broadway buffer.
Why don't we just say within the setback? Why does it have to have a different?
Well, because the setback's a lot smaller, the setback can be 75 feet. Before it was 50 feet.
I don't mind it conforming to the existing setback person.
So it could be,
Okay,
so make it 70, it's conforming too.
well, no, no shall take place within the required setback, required yard. Okay,
Right,
that's
I mean, it
okay.
seems like
That
a
makes,
better.
then it's consistent, instead of throwing in more numbers. You agree?
Yes, you just be measuring here. You know where your
Yeah, you
line
want
is.
neighbors with tape measures running.
Yeah.
Where your line is.
You will have them, but we don't want them. Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Can we get free passes to this?
No.
Every wedding.
What, so this idea works for everybody?
Does the word
Okay.
sounds, no,
I don't know.
Sounds, I have a
You know,
question mark.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
the language that we talked about was no amplified music
Yeah.
is permitted. Well, there could be other things. You could be
Yeah, DJ
cheering
talking,
and,
Oh, so you mean-
speeches.
But you mean amplified sounds.
The amplified is-
The
No
amplified
amplified.
both words.
The point is
You can have sounds
amplification.
outside.
You can have
Yeah,
sound.
you know, sound of birds chirping and people talking.
No, amplified. I guess I didn't know that amplified
So you
described.
think I need to say no amplified music or amplified sound?
Well, I don't know, I
No, I think
Exact.
that.
Okay,
Counting
okay.
is just.
Yeah.
The intent has been,
Okay.
It's just words on paper, but So
It looks,
they can't have a little PA system then if they're giving an awards out.
no,
Not after the cocktail, not after the time.
not at all.
Not
It's
ever.
not permitted. No, you don't want any loudspeakers
That's the thing
outside.
that's what carries, is when you have that, even if it's
Yeah.
a speech, you just have to use your voice.
So then you have that inside.
Yeah, or if you're having, you know, for some reason you're having some games, you can't be announcing it over the loudspeaker.
Okay, so you do the
No
directions
bingo in the
inside.
tent.
You can, just no amplified.
I wasn't thinking of bingo games, I was thinking of soccer or tennis or something. That's how you spend your time, Mark, yeah.
No,
Bingo.
I didn't say that.
Bingo.
So just now that Mark has brought up tents, is there anything that says you can or can't have tents? No, okay,
It's not in this law.
okay, thank you.
No, as long as you're, it's not a structure, right? So you could,
I don't know, and I have no idea what the building,
when I'm
I don't know, because it hasn't come up. There could be, I don't want to say it, because there could be something in the code. Sometimes codes have things about tents.
here's the
It's
question.
never
Okay,
come up.
I'm just,
Now that you,
wouldn't we want to disallow tents inside the setback, to extend beyond the setbacks?
you wouldn't
We
want
want it
tents in
in-
a setback.
That's what I'm trying to say.
You don't
A
want
tent
it
is
in
a
the
tent.
setback.
What are we gonna do? Put a provision in the code, no tents in the setback? It's just-
And by definition, a tent is a temporary structure.
Yeah.
So if it's for a particular event and there's no amplified noise or music allowed, and I, don't see the big deal.
Except it's my outdoor dining facility for something or other, and it's gonna be up all summer.
I don't know. It's a whole nother can of worms. Why don't we?
But in a way, if it's up, well, no, if it were up all summer, then it's not temporary anymore. Just the fact that you can take it down but doesn't make it temporary.
Well,
If
where's
you're
that
leaving it
defined?
up, if it's temporary and you're leaving it there.
Where's that defined?
Mark, I've told you, we've never dealt with the tent thing and if it's being dealt with elsewhere in the code, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to look, I'd have to look
I'm
into
saying
that.
most likely not. I mean, we have to make something that says you can't put a tent up for 3 months.
Just in this district?
Why don't we set it
I mean-
aside
Anyway.
until?
The kid's got a mildew.
Yeah, let's go, my suggestion is we get back to the tent law.
Okay.
Put it on the list of things to do.
Chapter 500.
No, I know, it
29.
can be an issue,
No, I get it, it's not,
but it's not peculiar to
nothing,
this
but, yeah,
district.
it's not, yeah, and
Yeah.
we've just never, I just
How
never
do you
thought
like the
about it
hours?
until Mark did, so.
How do you like the hours?
I think they're pretty good.
Yeah.
I think they're okay,
I mean, maybe,
One final word on tents. There are some restaurants that have tents where they lift, if the weather is nice, they lift the flaps and open them, and they just can close them if it's inclement weather. So, for most of the time.
But the thing is, when they get site plan approval, Mark, either the tent's in their site plan approval, or if it's not, okay? If it's in it, and then the planning board makes, requirements about it. If it's not, when you go out, you say, hey, listen, you can't have this up here, it doesn't comply with the site plan approval.
Why would you have a temporary structure of a tent go before the planning board?
Because if it's up there for one party, it's not a big deal, that's what Janice said. You're talking about it being there for 3 months.
Like for a
It's
season?
not temporary anymore.
I don't know what decides temporary though.
Well, you know
Yeah,
what?
I don't know, I don't wanna deal with it now, so why don't we set it aside?
You
We
can say,
don't
hey,
know.
listen, you're there for 3 months. You're right, and then we came in up with that issue with the signs, defining temporary signs. Temporary is difficult. But my
30 days.
suggestion is, I don't think we need to get into now, and,
Because it wouldn't affect just this district.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, that's-
carry on.
Carry on.
Okay, so are we okay with the time?
Yes.
Were you just saying you wanted to do something with the time?
the only thing, I mean, I think they're fine. I thought maybe just, a little later on the weekend, the start time a little later,
Yeah, maybe 10 a.m. on the
10
weekend.
a.m., yeah.
10 a.m.
Saturday and Sunday.
Which I don't think is gonna really, it's gonna be a lot of, early brunches anyway, so I don't think it's a big deal.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I'm happy with where it is, but,
I go either way, yeah, that's not.
I mean, it seems like you'd want to keep it the same start time just to make it, I don't know.
I don't feel
People
strong.
sleep later on weekends, I think.
I don't feel
later.
strong, I don't feel strongly either way, so. Shouldn't have brought it up.
The other thing interesting is if you make it 10 a.m. as opposed to 9, I guess the one thing you're doing is you're going to a less traffic time on Broadway.
This, we were talking about the weekends, we can make it 10 a.m. all the time if we want. Then you figure staff will be getting there at 11 or 10 and 9 anyway, right?
Or whatever.
Just make it 10, we're gonna make it 10 a.m. everywhere.
Why
So
don't,
come back and buy us another one.
I mean, this is obviously going to be a whole public hearing, right? I mean, we get this law, we have a
I
public.
know, yeah, people
Yeah.
can say things,
Right,
but I mean,
right.
let's get it,
Right,
let's get it so you guys are
Yeah,
comfortable with it.
I'd kind of rather leave it where it is.
Well, if we talk about having staff having to set things up and stuff at 9 a.m., it seems reasonable. You know, if you have,
Yeah, anything that's gonna go on in the morning is gonna be, it's not gonna be loud, I mean, it can't be loud anyway. I mean, look at people have breakfast.
So we leave it.
So let's leave it, okay.
Yeah.
Just leave it at 9 every day, okay? All right. Okay, then the third issue was the create an environmental or green space easement to protect the woods. I didn't quite understand.
This is what I didn't,
Okay,
I didn't really have, I didn't see anything actionable on here.
okay.
Okay, let's just,
Then 4 was reduce the FAR to .25. You know, we talked a lot about how we got to the FAR. I just want to pass this out, so make sure everybody understands this. Because people keep thinking everything's gonna be .45 FAR. There's only one property that can achieve that. Larry, I'm looking at the thing marked number 3, or I'm passing out the thing marked number 3.
do,
Mark, let's figure that out.
thank you.
Next slide.
Okay, and this has a column for what's permitted with a .45 FAR, and what the maximum gross floor area is. You have to achieve both of those things. You can only be as big as the smaller of them.
got it.
You can only be as big as the smaller of them.
Which you have helpfully highlighted, so I know.
Yes, what's in bold is the small, I know, actually, this should be a lot of numbers. And then the last column has what's currently permitted. And again, except for the Maxon property, which stays the same, you could see what's allowed under this is, all the other properties, it's less than what's currently permitted. But, for instance, on the, the Holy Spirit Association property and the large lot, a .45 FAR would be 346,367 square feet of building. But if you take their coverage and multiply it by 3, which is the height, you get 265,143. So what limits them is the maximum gross floor area, and that's 265. So there's only one property that gets to the .45 FAR, that's the Maxon property. And that's about where and it's allowed what it would be allowed now. On the other ones, I should say, both on the small lots, their maximum GFA is actually a little bit smaller than the footprint times 3 because they're also constrained by the setbacks, by what would be the setbacks, so they're a little bit smaller. Anyway, so
But that really answers the question about what we're permitting is,
we're not, so it is, on paper, you could have .45 FAR, but you can't, you can't, not unless you acquire more land. The maximum gross floor area is what dictates the size of the properties, which is the coverage times
I
3.
thought this was a sheet that you.
that helped, yeah.
Larry had
This is,
something
this
that
is,
says.
so we're, all cases smaller than what this.
Right, except for the Maxon
Right,
property,
but it
where it's
was
the
the
same.
same.
And the reason that okay, let me explain why that happens, is because the FAR is based on gross site area. Gross site area means the square footage on your property. The coverage number is based on what's called the net buildable site area. That would be when you subtract whatever percentage for steep slopes, subtract wetlands, subtract, mostly what's going on here is steep slopes. So when you subtract the steep slopes, you get the net buildable site area, and the coverage is based on that. Only in this district. It's not elsewhere in the village, but in this district we did it that way. So it's a pretty big limit on development. The reason it doesn't affect the Maxon property is Maxon property is pretty flat, and so that its net buildable area is pretty much the same as its gross site area. Not so for the other properties.
It's a good explanation.
Helpful and clear.
We've spent a lot of time on
Yeah.
FAR.
And
Well,
that-
you did.
And I think that sheet that you brought back tonight was the one that got us all kind of comfortable with it
Yeah.
when we were debating it. And it's also the .45 is with bonuses too.
Yes.
So I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
an important thing to remember.
Right.
Is that we're achieving other goals to allow that.
Right.
And even with that, it's still smaller, or equal to or smaller than the current build out amount, so.
Okay.
So you're inclined to leave what we have?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, then on requiring that assisted living facilities be for profit and eliminate not-for-profit membership clubs as a permitted use. Well, the reason the not-for-profit membership clubs are listed as permitted use, they're permitted use there now. So we just lifted all the special permit uses there now and included it. And I think the board did talk about why they don't want to limit the assisted living to for-profit. I'm assuming. Right. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's, I just don't know if it's, I don't know if you can accomplish anything by doing that. Is it?
I guess you could accomplish something, but I mean, I don't know how practical it is because, well, first of all, I don't think it's a real, zoning is supposed to regulate the use, not the user, so I would be really uncomfortable doing that. I mean, I think if it were challenged, I wouldn't feel comfortable defending that. There may be places that do have it in their code, but also as I mentioned before, but this is up to you guys, not to me, but I can think of situations where an first of all, an assisted living facility could start out to be for profit and then ends up not being, or anything.
Like any other use.
Right. In
It's
addition to which, if let's say it's something like there are some really wonderful assisted living facilities out there that aren't for profit. If your goal is to have them, I haven't been there, but I hear that the Hebrew Home in Riverdale is supposed to be a lovely facility.
It's beautiful.
And there's some for, that nuns run that are, they're not for profit and they might be really.
They might.
Pardon?
You're awesome.
Yeah, it's probably a not-for-profit isn't going to be able to afford any of these properties, so it's really probably more of an academic question. I mean, anybody who's can afford one of these properties is doing it because it can make some money off it. So again, it's academic.
I would hate to limit out what could be a very good community, accepted small assisted living facility that happened to be nonprofit. Maybe there is such a thing out there. You'd hate to say no to them by the zoning, so
Okay.
I wouldn't want to do that.
All right, let's move on then, because I'm sorry, there's more issues than just what's on here, given the correspondence we got in the last couple of days. All right, on the length of the building, the reason I say Peter Bugeri on the length of the building, it wasn't so much that he, said there should be a length on the building, but he had done that
Pictures.
sketch.
Yeah.
I don't think I brought it with me. But we did talk to Ashley about those, and she said, that they were really not doable, the way these were, because you couldn't get, do you remember, Larry, you couldn't get to the back of the properties.
Yeah, so you can see it.
But anyway, but it did, however, get, and Mark had suggested too, get us talking about maybe we want to put a limit on how wide a building could be. You know, the length of the building.
Larry Lunky had one question. Where does the pilot come in, and can that be
Well, I'll get to that.
from the start, or is that just?
Yeah, I was there, I have that issue to discuss later, but let's finish this thing.
Okay.
But in short, you can't require a pilot. Spoiler alert, but, all right, we'll get back to that. Okay, but,
So there's length and width,
well, I mean,
Yeah.
the
It's the
width, the
frontage.
frontage, yeah.
the frontage.
The frontage, so when you're looking at the White House, you know, what
Yeah.
you're looking at is the frontage.
Yeah, and Larry and Ashley and I talked about that, and thought that, maybe, a limit of 225 feet at grade might make sense. I drafted something, you can take a look at
What's
it.
the length of the White House now?
168,
So 225 would be an increase.
yes.
But not, doesn't allow, however, it doesn't allow you to fill your entire lot.
Thank you.
Larry, were you gonna,
Okay.
yeah, when we were with Ashley, we had some like line drawings that gave you an idea of what it would look like on different of the lots. And that's sort of how we came up with the 225.
Do you have something?
It's a parking lot.
I mean, I'm gonna, yeah, it's a little bit sluggish for some reason. I'll try to.
It's got the
Maximum building, like, no building shows, like the 225 at grade. This limitation shall not apply to covered walkways, porticos, or similar structures connecting buildings.
Excuse me.
So let's say you had a,
Driveways and
Yeah,
Yeah.
two separate buildings, but there was, like in the middle school.
yeah,
Okay.
So I'm not sure what the best way is to show this, but, well, I mean, do you want me to show what 225 is?
Sure.
yeah, yeah.
This,
I remember how you
This is
guys were
back-
doing it at the meeting. It was pretty helpful though.
this
That
is
was
the
all-
Carapiello
Yeah, I mean,
building.
it's, so, I mean, the property, I know it's hard to see with the aerial, but the property, let's just look at the Carafiello property, right, since we're probably.
Larry, let me just back up 1 minute. You know what we looked at? We looked at the big Abbott House building.
Right. that was-
And that gave us some idea. And the Abbott House building, I think, was about 200 feet wide.
Right, yeah, actually, we looked at the assessment,
Right.
assessment records. Okay, so I won't.
And that's the biggest of the
And it's
buildings.
200 in this lateral direction, you know,
Oh, you go in the.
Right, so
entrance.
turn it this way to see what it would front on Broadway. Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's shorter in this direction.
And what this is also aiming to do in case there's some combination of properties to make sure we don't have just like a railroad running.
Yes.
That was what we actually did show. So to try to visualize the size of the lots here, so the northern property boundary is roughly here for the Carafiello property. You see this little row of hedges here?
Yeah.
And then the southern end is somewhere in here, you know, where this row of trees is.
Right, so you don't want to go in the whole,
So to measure, you know, to
That's
measure,
about 325. No, what's that?
Oh, there you go. I know.
so,
Pretty impressive.
so this is, well, let's see. A little hard to see there. So 225 feet is that, right there.
And it seemed like
Now, what we
reasonable.
What we also did as an exercise, and remember, it's of any one building. Now, so let's say you combined both of these lots, and now your property went from up here to down here. Let's just, again, this was a hypothetical example.
So, I mean, you could have two buildings side by side.
Well, whatever,
Oh,
yeah.
you can put that one in the middle.
Right. Right, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could reposition this, but,
But you couldn't have one building running.
yeah, running for 300 some odd feet. Anyway, that's about 225 roughly. So I mean, that's, if you look at that, that's roughly centered in this one big lot. So what you would end up with is, you know, almost a campus of buildings if there were some large combination of these lots, none of which would exceed any length, by 225 feet wouldn't exceed that length. So.
You remember there used to be the limit of 180 square feet for multifamily buildings, and then we took that out, but it was only for multifamily buildings, but we took that out in response to a comment from John Sheehan, who said that, well, wait, if what you want to do is conserve green space, would you do you
Larger
want to?
buildings,
Yeah,
less
larger
buildings.
buildings, yeah, but,
That's still, this is large anyway.
yeah,
You know, on the Maxon property, that's bigger than,
That wouldn't be affected by this because it's not.
it's probably not wide enough.
yeah, okay, that's what I thought it would.
Oh, I think this is reasonable. I'm comfortable with this.
Okay.
And this not apply to covered walkways, porticos, or similar structures connecting buildings.
Right.
So again, if
Yeah.
you had a campus, you know, which, I mean, you'll see something like that in assisted living where you
Yeah,
have your, you know, independent and, you know, an assisted and memory care might be separated, but they're still one complex, right?
right.
Okay,
So Abbott House is about 200 feet, would you say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's about that. Oops.
I think you use that electronic ruler thing, but then I think we looked at the property card too.
Well, yeah, we did, yeah, see, this is not exact, it says 221, but it's, the property card itself
Said
shows
200, but even if it's 221, I think that's why we decided to go with 225 rather than the 200.
I think you should
because-
I'm off on
roof line on the,
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, anyway,
So, does that seem like a good way to,
I'll put my
good
perspective.
approach to that? Okay.
My other question was just like, you know, the size of, I think that's why it's helpful to think of Abbott House, although Abbott House to me is very big, so.
Well,
200,
it's tall too, I mean, it's a little bit,
It's
that's,
very roomy.
yeah.
well, but it's not, but it exceeds any of the height
Current White
limits.
House is
168.
168.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem adding another 25% to that or
No,
whatever.
it's not that big.
No, and remember, there's the provision that it has to be broken
yeah,
up
I was
and,
gonna say, we worked hard on the,
yeah.
not having
I
just
think-
like
I
the
think to me this
Soviet
is-
style
This is really,
parking lot.
this is really for the,
Buildings.
this is really to address the combining of lots and having a giant
yeah.
600 foot or 500 foot straight, even if it's like some curves. I think this does a good job of getting that.
Okay,
Okay, moving on. All right, there was Pat Natarelli's suggestion that there be a planning board recommendation on Board of Trustees discretionary decisions. I mean, my recommendation on that is I don't think you have to get into that much detail of process in the.
in the zone.
No, and I think it's gonna depend on the case or the
Right.
situation if you want to include them. I think we, hopefully we would want to include them, but.
But we retain the discretion.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last of the issues that came up at the meeting around, in our discussions was permitting single-family houses as a permitted use. And on that one, Larry Lonke had a
He said no.
strong no. I guess he met with the housing committee,
He met with
and they
the
said they were,
I think I'm the only one who's supportive of it, so.
Right, and
I
I,
can't keep losing 1-4.
okay, that's it.
All right.
All right, then,
Can I just ask,
yeah, I have other things, but okay,
the one that I had to bring up is,
okay.
Oh, were you okay on this detached single family? We're not, you,
I was never totally in favor of it, but I think that you'd have to do, before I could be in favor of it, I think you'd have to.
There's nobody in favor
All
of it.
historical.
There's nobody in favor of it, except Mark, and he gave up.
For all historic buildings to be maintained, you couldn't have the discretion to pull them down. So,
Well, you also then run into the issue that you can't really guarantee affordable housing then, so we lose a couple of our key goals with this whole
Yeah,
process.
I'm not,
Okay, good.
so restaurants, to me, I'm questioning the need of standalone restaurants. A restaurant facility within a complex or something, but I just don't know if we absolutely, why we absolutely need restaurants. Yes, we need dining facilities.
So again, we're coming back to the comprehensive plan, but that was one of the pieces in the list, right, in the update from the committee. Doesn't mean we can't bring it up again, and but,
I mean, I honestly think it's probably an unlikely use for any of these.
But so maybe the small ones.
Maybe the small ones. And I always thought, what I always envisioned was the smaller buildings on, say, the Carafiello property. Maybe one of those could be a potential
really
restaurant.
super,
Yeah, like
A very small.
a very
Yeah.
small bistro.
But that's okay.
But,
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean,
Not very noisy.
I mean, I can't imagine someone buying like, one of these properties and making it only a restaurant, it's.
The restaurants have a very small margin, I mean, profit margin. I just can't imagine
So,
you
yeah,
can
to me,
afford these properties, but
I mean,
this
it's-
would give you the option.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Something like
almost, if like, let's play out Mark's scenario. If it was the Carafiello property and it was still offices, we would not then be able to just open a standalone restaurant in one of those little buildings. It just wasn't allowed, right?
I'm sorry.
You would, so if it.
Oh, you mean now you couldn't, no.
Right. Yeah, so,
But
yeah.
under this zoning, you could keep that as your office and then also make that one building, I think we all went into it a
Yeah.
few years ago, a restaurant.
And then the very small one that's out of compliance on the tiny lot, the most northerly,
Right.
that has some potential, perhaps. So I would leave it in.
I would leave it in too. I think we were looking for ways to try to preserve some of those existing smaller buildings and the possibility of somebody buying one of the huge properties in order to make it a gargantuan restaurant is small. And it was one of the uses that the comprehensive planning committee put on the list. I didn't take it off the list.
That the community could benefit. I mean, when we looked at those uses, I think the comprehensive plan group was thinking, what might the whole community benefit from? And that's why some of these things came up.
And remember, we did have the excluding formula fast food
Yeah.
establishment, so you can't have a,
No Chuck E. Cheese.
yeah,
Okay.
okay? All right. This it on those issues. Then we got the, email from, Peter Buderi yesterday, I guess it was. And I did look at some of that stuff. I looked at all of it, actually. Okay, the first question, I guess maybe the best thing to do would be read his questions, and then, on the property tax related questions, are these uses, if run by non-religious, oh, did you bring it? Okay, then, but I guess I should read it anyway. Is this, okay, but for, not-for-profit entities exempt from property taxes, schools, libraries, museums, art galleries, community center buildings, and annual membership clubs. Most of those are probably, would be not-for-profit. I suppose you put in an annual membership club that's not, that's for profit, but anyway. But all of those listed, just so you know, all those listed, schools, libraries, museums, art galleries, community center buildings, annual membership clubs, those are currently permitted in that zone, and they were just continued. And then do state or federal laws require some or all of them to be allowable uses in the zoning district? No, they don't. Schools have to, I guess, and religious buildings, but, like I said, those uses are there because they were there. And are they exempt from property tax? Well, not-for-profits are generally exempt from property tax, but that's a matter of state tax law. Nothing the village has anything to do for. Then, I was told that a pilot is typically much smaller than property taxes, and also that their payment by a not-for-profit institution is voluntary. Is the latter true? Yes, it is true. Can a pilot be of comparable size to property taxes on a taxable development? Can it increase? Well, you can do whatever you want with a pilot if the person agrees to it, but you can't impose a pilot. You cannot require a pilot. You can't say to somebody who's tax exempt, we'll only let you in here if you give us a pilot. It's they're voluntary and they're ordinarily negotiated. And it's settled. New York law says that to require a pilot of a tax exempt property, I'm going to quote, is a violation of the clear constitutional mandate that prohibits the alteration or repeal of a tax exemption extended to what the state has determined to be a charitable institution. So the state says it's tax exempt, you can't go ahead and impose tax on it. So, sometimes people will, agree to pay a pilot, but they don't have to. You can't refuse approval. You can, but you'll get sued and you'll lose.
You can, but you lose.
Have we got pilots? Yes.
We've had two, in the years that I've been here, we've had two pilots. Obviously, both are voluntary.
Yes.
One was the Foundation for Economic Education, which of course no longer exists. The other is Columbia University, which they still pay. Same amount as in 1992 when I got here.
Okay.
So we probably shouldn't spend a lot of time
$16,000.
discussing it, because it's not something.
1-6.
16,000. That's it.
That's all we have left. Yes.
But again, there's lots of reasons why entities would want to pay voluntarily, and it has to do with goodwill and community relations and all those things, but you can't legislate that. So there may have been a longer, I have never researched the history on why we have a pilot with Columbia, but there may have been all those reasons in the past. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then special permit process related questions. The special permit process requires that the planning board be satisfied that the proposed use will not generate noise or disturbance. What happens if it ends up generating noise anyway? Well, number one, the noise ordinance got enforced. It's a violation of the noise ordinance. More importantly, if the activity that's causing the noise violates the special permit, that violation can be enforced under Chapter 95 of the code. That's the chapter for enforcing building code violations or zoning code violations, but it also applies to violations of any special permit or site plan requirement. So they can be prosecuted. And then finally, if it's a use that the board thinks needs to be monitored for some reason, it might put an expiration date on the special permit. That's frequently done. And then, when the renewal comes up, it's dealt with then. Either, they're forced to do something to deal with it, or you refuse to renew the special permit for repeated and egregious violations. That would be a pretty tough thing to do, but I think the most important thing is you enforce under the code. You've got the tools already to do that. Okay.
Larry had a question back to the pilot, which if you negotiated with a pilot with a for-profit and then it convert, does the pilot hold, or is it with the ownership, or is it with the property? If you somehow did that.
The owner. I would think the owner. Your agreement is with the owner.
Right, it would be pretty unusual to have a pilot with a for-profit entity, because they'd be taxable at that point.
Is that what he said for a pilot with a for-profit?
Yeah, so in other words, if you said, there was a for-profit.
No, then it's irrelevant. Yeah, no.
No, but the agreement is with the owner.
It's with the owner, okay.
Yeah.
I'm guessing if they converted to a non-profit, they'd be a different legal entity anyway, so might be it.
Oh, if it's a for-profit and then they became not-for-profit?
Probably,
But it can't just be that you're a failure and you're not making a profit. You have to get approved as a not-for-profit.
Oh, never mind. We're not making a profit, so now we're not for profit.
even from one non-for-profit to the other, Columbia University sells out to Fordham University, we have no more pilot. We have to negotiate with Fordham.
I will tell you
Might
that
do better.
Well, whatever.
the 501c3 process is very careful. There are a lot of requirements you go through. You absolutely go through them. Yes.
Okay. Then the next, is it true that making a use such as assisted living allowable by special permit opens the village to lawsuits from developers who don't succeed in obtaining a special permit, whereas this is not the case when developers request a use variance. Well, people can sue for anything, but the important thing is that special permit uses are permitted uses, so long as all the conditions are met. If the conditions are met, you grant the special permit. Use variances are for uses that are not permitted. And you come in, you get a variance, standards very high and they're very difficult to obtain. So, yeah, it's easier to get a special permit than it is to get a use variance, but the main reason for that is you can only get a special permit if that use is permitted. That's the special permit use, so. Okay, on bulk-related questions. All right, the existing non-residential uses within the proposed NBMD area, e.g. office uses at Max Center 90 North Broadway, are not currently allowed by special permit in a 1F40 district. Can they be enlarged as of right? Okay, that one's it's sort of it's academic once we adopt this legislation, but to answer it, it's actually, it was an oversight and whenever the code was changed to up the 1F10 to 1F20 and then to 1F40, that thing where it says the uses listed as in 1F districts along Broadway, you can have office buildings. That's how both the Carafiello office building and the Maxon office building came in under that provision, under the 1F10 thing, and that was never updated in the code. So if you were going to decide how big could they build, I think that the fairest way to do that would be to apply what the coverage limitations were under the 1F10 district. But again, that's academic because you're going to have new coverage limitations. But I know they both have variances, and everybody's assuming that they're operating by virtue of variance. Both of them came in under that special permit allowance for office buildings. The reason they needed a variance was that special permit provision says that the offices have to be for a single entity. And they came in to get variances so that they could have offices for more than one company, both the Carafiello and on the Maxon property. So that's what the variances are about. So they're operating by, but that variance would have nothing to do with, coverage or anything like that. Okay. All right, the next question was, are the net buildable site areas under resource protection as stated in AKRF 6319 presentation merely estimates, or were they calculated from current surveys? They were calculated. The net buildable site area was based on available GIS data from New York State Department of DEC, the National Wetlands Inventory in Westchester County. So they may not be exact, but they're very close. So they're a lot more than estimates.
I just was going back, was the second half of that first question, that Paul, you answered all that? I see that for institutional special.
Yeah, what do
you that was the
yeah.
slide. Okay, sorry.
Okay, 3. The board and village attorney have stated that allowable bulk under current zoning is greater than under the proposed amendment. However, I find that FAR under current zoning for practical purposes is .45, 3 stories of 15% building coverage. If the proposed amendment, base FAR is .30 but can be increased to .45 if affordable housing is provided and historic buildings preserved. That's correct. Okay. Building coverage under the current zoning is 15%. Proposed building coverage is 20% of net buildable site area, which can be less than 15% to as much as 20% based on the topography of the individual site. And that's also true. But that's that chart I showed you before.
Yeah, so this question is, am I wrong?
Share that
She's
chart.
not wrong.
And is he wrong? No.
No, but it doesn't prove anything.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know that he
Maybe
was
we can
trying
share
to
this
prove
with him.
anything, but he just... Okay, and then, okay, technical questions. Doesn't the 250-foot minimum lot width in the proposed amendment exclude the larger Holy Spirit site, which is 100 frontage on East Sunnyside Lane? If so, would this make the site ineligible for development? Now, all of the 6 existing lots would be legally pre-existing non-conforming, so the fact that they don't meet whatever would be the minimum lot doesn't mean that they can't be developed. They would have to meet the other area requirements, but not the minimum lot size. But the minimum lot width requirement would require only to newly created lots, if you were creating new lots. On the other hand, it doesn't really need to be there, given, I mean, most of the code has minimum lot sizes for, in the residential districts, but here, since you have a minimum lot size of 4 acres, and probably you don't need a minimum width and a minimum length, but it's also sort of harmless for what's there. It's like if you want, I could take it out of the district.
Is there a risk one way or the other?
No. My thinking was to take it out, we don't need it, so then I ran that past Ashley, I sent her an email, and she might take it out, but she said it's not gonna make any difference, because the 6 lots that are there exist, so you're not creating any new lots.
Combining lots? What does that do for you?
Well, if you were gonna combine it, are there, well, I guess it might mean, would you have the minimum 250 feet? Let's say you were combining lot 5.4 and 5.3, you wanted to make them one lot, then I'm not sure you'd get the minimum width of 250, but I don't
I
have.
don't know why we have to get it, there's
See
no
down here,
rational way to get it.
what?
I don't know why we have it if there's no way to get that minimum width.
Well, no, if you're dividing, let's say you're dividing the Holy Spirit property up.
You could get it.
Yeah. But I mean, since it's a minimum, but since the minimum lot size is 4 acres, you really can't, why don't we just take it out? I mean, okay, I'll take it out. It's easy enough.
For me, so.
Okay. In the proposed amendment, is the provision stating that underground parking is not included in the calculation of height mean that height is measured from above the parking level rather than from the measuring point if the top of the parking level is above grade? That was a good catch. And it was really meant to apply only to stories, really not to the height, because the code defines how you measure height. And you measure height from a point on the ground to the highest point in the building. But when we say height, we talk about feet height and also number of stories. It's actually a little bit confusing. But
You're just changing it from.
so I'm suggesting that underground parking shall not be included in the number of stories, and then that covers it. So that if you have a parking lot, it's partly underground and partly above ground. It won't get counted in the number of stories, but it will get counted in the height. So let's say 4 feet of it is above ground, that'll get included in height.
Okay. Thank you for that.
And then, okay, the next one, the amendment redefines site capacity in the new district to be in terms of floor area as well as dwelling units, but new section 224-85.1 doesn't state a maximum floor area with respect to site capacity. That's again, a good catch, and I thank Mr. Buderi for that. And on site capacity, the site capacity in this district relates only to the number of dwelling units. The reason they have site capacity down in the business district, I've never been able to quite figure out how they figure it out, but in the residential district, it's clear. And since we have FAR for the other uses, for all uses, you don't need to worry about the density factor for them, but the density factor would just define how many residences you could have. So I just fixed the definition there, so it says site capacity is expressed in dwelling units in all residence districts and the North Broadway mixed-use district, and in terms of dwelling units and floor area in the business district. Before that, the phrase in the North Broadway Mixed Use District came after Business District. They just moved that. And then the last one, there seem to be typographical errors in the handout. And there are, because when I send the documents over to Larry, I think his printer has different margins than my printer. So the columns got messed up. But I do send them as a PDF and in a Word document. It's right in the PDF, but I think to put it online and everything, it's easier to do it with the Wordish document. But anyway,
Well,
we'll figure
PDF
that out.
often has highlighting, which is where.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Version, but
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
be more careful about
Yeah.
the margins.
Okay, these are good things that were pointed out, we appreciate.
Okay,
And
that's on that.
Analyzing.
And then, I'll just start on and then we got the one today about traffic. Okay. Does the board know what the existing level of service is? Everybody got that email today?
I didn't
Print it out.
I didn't print it out, do you?
I have my own.
It's going right.
Oh, it's coming out.
It's coming around.
Does the board know what the existing level of service is? Well, the traffic expert will calculate what the level of service is. Now, just to understand, because I think people may not understand that generally the way this works, when somebody comes up in with a proposal, they come up, their traffic expert has to make these showings. On I think every project I've worked on here where there's a traffic expert, the village hires its own traffic expert, and it's at the expense of the applicant because it's part of the secret process. And the village's traffic expert will look at what they do. So this will be, so you don't have to say, oh, well, they're determining it. No.
We're double checking and we're making our own determination.
Yeah, and they're often, they can be different. So that's what the existing level of service is. That's determined by the traffic expert. By which factor it would be measured, it's understanding that this can vary and is determined by the consultant or client based on local conditions or purpose of the structure. Well, our traffic expert would help us with that.
I think it's also important to have it measured right before a new project comes in. It's going to be 10 years before a project comes in. So, it's not that it's completely irrelevant what it is right now, but, it's...
Oh, yeah, you do it current, and then they
Yeah.
also usually, when you do these things, they make you take into account other projects that are in the works or expected to happen, whatever. And at what time would it be measured? Well, it's measured at a bunch of times, and then they decide what's the peak hour, and they define the morning hours and the afternoon peak hours, but they do measurements at different times to determine what the peak hour is, and then the calculations are usually done based on what the peak hour is, because that's when it's the worst. And at what road segment or intersections would it be measured? Those are generally identified by the planning board, or, the village's planner.
Right.
Yeah, which intersections they want you to look at. And the board's used to this, we've done this a lot.
Up with the
Yeah.
traffic studies.
Okay, so then the wording of subparagraph 1 makes it sound as though a degradation from level of service A to level of service D would be considered insignificant and therefore would not require mitigation. Is that correct? Yes is defined because it's up until level of service D, it's considered acceptable. So if you go from A to B or A to C, it's considered acceptable. So, and I confirmed that the last go round, because when I first saw it, I wasn't sure. I'd call the traffic guy, and he said, okay, the wording of subparagraph 2 makes it sound as though an increase in intersection delay with level of service E, I think maybe he meant level of service F. I didn't get it. From 55 seconds to 79 seconds would be considered insignificant and therefore would not require mitigation. If in fact he means level of service F, an increase from 55 to 75 definitely would be significant because it can't go up more than 10%. So the most it could go up would be 5 seconds or 5.5 seconds. So, then I have to say,
Excuse me, he's here and
I could explain if you like.
Maybe we'll go through the other, when we go through it all, and then we'll go back to that one.
Okay, four I don't get, so.
Okay, so
maybe
keep
we
those
can
two.
get- Okay. 5, what are examples of anticipated mitigation? Adding traffic lights, well, you know, you can add traffic lights, you can change the timing of lights. One mitigation that we saw a couple times, although the projects didn't go forward, were having the shifts change. So if you have an assisted living facility, the shift changes would not be when at the peak traffic, so when school's starting, when school's getting out. There's a lot of different. Can the village do these on its own? Well, the mitigation would have, the applicant would be responsible for it, and then if there's DOT, I mean, the state has requirements, because it's on the state highway, well, then they have to deal with that, have to get the permission.
I guess the question would be, what about if we're expecting something but they can't get state permission for that?
Well, if you need it for the mitigation, then they're not
It's not-
mitigating, and they
it's
don't
not
get their
mitigated,
approval,
correct.
You
right.
can't, right, so
Right.
it's not mitigated, so you can't do it.
Will the developer be responsible to provide the traffic impact study, and if so, isn't there a conflict? As I explained, they'll come up with it, and then we have it reviewed by our own traffic person. And then the one about for the highway capacity manual states no influence from downstream traffic. I don't know, and I actually sent that question on to the planner, but since I just got this late in the day, they didn't get back to me yet. And what's the remedy after the special permit issuance if traffic ends up exceeding the projections? All I can say, I know it's gonna sound crazy, but I have never seen the traffic exceed, and I'm not talking about here, any place I've worked, traffic never, they're always projected to be worse than it is. Whether it's where I live or projects I've worked on. It's always projected to be worse than it is. But if it is, I don't know what you do, then you have to come up, you have to do some more traffic mitigation, I guess.
Well, what,
Additional
you have to wait
mitigation,
till
just
the
additional measures depending on.
Once in a while, like when they were approving the project in Hastings, you know, I don't know if you know the one on Sawmill River Road, those loft kinds of
Yeah.
things that went up, that one of the conditions was they had to see if there was gonna be more traffic, you know, after the place was up and running after a year, I think. They had to measure again, and if there was more traffic, then they had to put in a turn lane or, you know, get the signal changed or something. You can do things like that.
Mitigation that
You can
is
anticipate,
needed
right.
later in the
Yeah.
process.
Right.
I would think that the traffic, the companies that have traffic studies, that do traffic studies, want to protect their reputation, and try to be incredibly accurate if they're discredited. That's
And
not good for business.
Right, right, and I know, the ones, what was, I think maybe it was, I don't think we got that far on the Brightview one, I don't know that we got that far, but on the Continuum one, we had John Collins, we were working with John Collins on that, and he was really good. He was really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a profession. that-
Yeah, my experience has been with them, you know, I don't feel this way about, you know, all
All
professionals,
fields.
but I think that the traffic people seem to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay,
And remember, you've got theirs,
And plus-
his or her reputation's on the line, and then you've got you know, the villages.
yes, so you
And I find that they, you know, they,
want it to be right, you're
Yeah.
not trying to have some predetermined outcome.
right.
You want the professional result stated professionally. Okay.
So, is the board,
Well, we have
You
to
did a
get,
very good job, except, you
We
know,
have
there are a
one
couple
item
of
to go
things
back
that
to,
you
right?
don't understand.
we have one to go back to.
3 and 4.
We have 3 and 4 that we don't really know. So it's up to Brian if you want to.
I mean, just bang these out, you know, with the thing.
I'm sorry.
Bang out these, question 3 and 4.
Yes,
since,
all right, so
Yeah, do you want to come up and just explain those?
just those two?
Sure.
Okay.
Well,
again, this is based on technical research, someone else, one of that group that signed it didn't. On 3, yes, the passage in the zoning says that if you're in LOS F, which is like failure.
We have E there, that's why I was confused. Oh, it was F,
Yeah.
okay.
So it deals with a degradation within F, but it doesn't deal with a degradation within E, which could be as substantial as going from 55 to
Oh, I see
79
what you're saying.
seconds. So that's why I said, am I clear?
Yeah, no,
It doesn't deal with the degradation within the LOSE, which could be substantial. That was my point.
Okay,
All right. And what, on 4,
I'll put down to, I'll ask, I think Anthony was doing this, unless the traffic person got that.
as far as we could understand subparagraph 3, it says that you only have a problem if the queue goes all the way to the next intersection.
Yeah,
And I'm just pointing out that that's
then
quite
here,
a large queue.
Yeah.
So if it's short of that intersection, you still have a disaster, but
yeah.
you have a bad condition, but the code as it's written doesn't consider that something that.
Well, you know what,
requires
one thing I was thinking that, because like this kind of peculiar to Irvington, that how long it is from intersection to intersection, at least around that part, on those two things, is that, let me get where's the draft law?
Oh,
Well, you guys don't have it either. I have it someplace.
Well, that we had last night.
No, the
Number
draft I
of
was working with,
The one from last
I
night.
have it. No, you guys don't have it. That on the, where it defines what's the significant impact? This is how it reads.
so we have it in our,
Okay.
we do.
It can't result in an unmitigated significant adverse impact at any of the intersections identified by the planning board. The following shall be deemed a significant adverse traffic impact, and it defines some things. Seems to me, and this is, I would want to talk to the traffic person, there could be other things that could be a significant traffic
So we could add to
impact
this
that
list.
aren't in there. No, that you might say, at a minimum, the following shall be deemed a significant adverse impact, or something like that. And then that might pick up other things that they would say. But I have to check with them whether that's a way that makes sense. But I think that might be, something like that might work. And I think that would address your issue.
You got my points.
Yeah, okay.
That's always a good start.
I'm
Good
done
job.
on that. Okay, did you really want to go home and listen to?
I think it's very good.
Oh,
I'm not going to press next month. 30-day ban on all travel to Europe, except for the UK.
It's a 30-day ban.
Well, because
Starting
it's
Friday.
English.
Yeah, exactly.
Starting Friday.
Starting Friday, yeah. So,
Okay, because, did we have advice of counsel?
yeah.
Bye.
And I will make a motion to adjourn. If I can have a second. All in favor?
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
Yeah. Leonard Cohen with Cuddy and Fader on behalf of
Your
Max.
name is really Leonard Cohen.
Yes.
Did they do that on purpose?
My grandfather was named Leonard Cohen, so I'm actually named after my grandfather, but I'm a big fan of the musician.
That's good.
You're already, good start.
I go by Lenny, but Leonard is it usually gets a reaction from the crowd. So.
Who's Suzanne in your life? No.
So I'm here tonight on behalf of my client, and I understand, also just for the board's information, Taylor Palmer is home with his newborn baby, and they send their regards.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll pass that along. A letter was submitted from my office from William Null. I think our position was stated in that letter, but the applicant strongly objects to the 75-foot setback. It creates dimensional limitations and on their property, and a significant financial impact as well. We really think that this process has been long thought out. There was 9 months of deliberations and meetings and, materials that were submitted. The 50-foot setback is more than appropriate. There's plenty of screening and buffering to protect neighbors and residents along the corridor. So with that being said, I hope the board takes that into consideration as they move forward.
Thank you very much. Now I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.